Welcome to the online study forum initiated by West Bengal EGF. This forum is especially meant for the EU students. And tonight we are going to discuss from the book The Mark of the Christians by Francis Schaeffer. Brother Shashank is here, and I am Minlun. The discussion will not be based on not solely on the content of the book, but the questions that arises, the questions that arise, that comes to our mind as we read the book. So Francis Schaeffer, in his book, he the book is based on Jesus' word from John 13:35 about uh, love as the defining mark of a Christian. So I would like to begin by asking this question to Brother Shashank. Why does Jesus emphasize love as the defining mark of a Christian in John 13:35? And how does this shape the way we live out our faith?
Yeah, that's one of the defining thoughts of the book about Francis Schaeffer bases his writing and thoughts also. That's what we find. And in fact, when we look at why the Christians were first called Christians, it was because when people looked at them, they saw them to be Christ-like. And when we look at Christ, what does it mean to be Christ-like? One of the most defining thing would be loving, because right throughout the Gospels, one of the most defining characters that we see or characteristics that we see is his love. It is his love that attracts. It is his love that transforms people, that makes uh, that breaks boundaries, like that changes people's hearts. And then that's something that we find to be the most defining factor about Jesus. And in fact, why so when you look at even the story of the Bible, I think when you look at God's rescue plan, especially in the Old Testament, and when I read the Old Testament in the light of the New Testament, what I find interesting is it kind of tells you about the only way God can rescue the world or the humanity is through love. Uh,
Mm.
we often ask these questions like, if God is so powerful and good, why doesn't he just show himself and we will follow him? But then such things have happened in the past. When we look at God's miraculous rescue of the Israelites out of Egypt, his presence is really seen and experienced by the people. And yet within a short time, they rebel against him. They forget about him. They create their own gods. So just experiencing God, his power, by sight, by hearing is not enough to change our heart. Similarly,
Mm.
if we think of the other aspect, that why doesn't God just remove all evil? He can do, but for that, he has to do something like the flood. He
Mm.
cannot just keep anyone. Even the family that he keeps, they are not perfect. Noah's family is not
Mm.
perfect. The moment they come out of the ark, we see their imperfection as well. So the one thing that can really bring change is love. And I feel when you look at the entire story of the Bible, that's the one redefining aspect. So not just about Jesus. I think when you look at the triune God, uh, love stands out. It is because of God's love we have a chance to live despite our wretchedness. So that's something that stands out for me.
Mm.
Uh, and I think that's what Francis Schaeffer brings out.
Mm. Yeah, I just follow up of the first question. How well do you think the writer Francis Schaeffer put out this mark of the Christians in his booklet?
I think by and large, what he does is the book is a very short book. I mean, we can read it in an hour or two if we just go through it. And in general, they are basically meditations on two passages from the Gospels. And
Mm.
the way he has written it, the way he has written, he has not complicated it. But then I think Francis Schaeffer has a way with words to write simply and yet powerfully. And I think
Mm.
that's one of the enduring legacies of the book, why we still uh, read this book. We still are challenged by what he is writing from his time, and irrespective of time, culture, it still makes sense even today in our day and age as well. So, So yeah, I think the first time I read the book and having finished it, I was really excited and challenged and
Mm,
encouraged all at the same time. So I think he has done a great job.
mm.
And if any
Yeah.
one of us is interested, it is a very good small book to begin with. Just in an
Mm,
hour or two, you can read it.
mm. Yes, very true. And for me, when I read it, it was like a sermon also, but not in a way like a sermon again, but it is a short uh, book sounding like a sermon, and it is interesting. As you said,
Just
the
like
mark of a
just to add
Christian.
a bit here, Milun, I was just thinking like in other words, it is his quiet time.
Uh-uh. Yes,
Like
yes.
when you read it, it's like his quiet time. It's not
Mm,
as if he's theologizing or he's writing a paper. I think when we read it, we kind of sense him taking you on a thought journey. So
mm,
that's
mm,
something that I felt more like a meditative writing. So more like a quiet time.
mm. Yes, as he writes about the love, he also touches about truth. So uh, Schaeffer stresses the importance of balancing the two, love and truth. What are the dangers of emphasizing one over the other, and how can Christian maintain this balance?
Uh, Again, here I'm reminded of Jesus' engagement with Peter,
Mm,
right? So we see love, and yet at the same time, we don't see Jesus uh, disregarding or hiding Peter's mistake or like Peter's uh, like denying of Jesus under the carpet. He doesn't do that,
mm,
but rather he brings it to light. And by bringing it to light, he actually uh, kind of portrays how great his love is. That Jesus knows the reality, the truth, and yet still he chooses to show love by giving him a greater responsibility. Peter has
mm,
shown himself unfit for responsibility. Peter has shown himself not trustworthy. But then that is what where love becomes more powerful, and that's where we show more love when we still choose to show grace in that way, where it is not deserved. I think that's the most powerful way of showing love. Where I mean, otherwise, everybody can love someone who loves you back. It's
mm,
more of a transactional love. But then love, the way we read in the Bible, is not transactional. Christ chose to die for us while we're still sinners,
mm,
right? That's the gospel love. That's the love we see in the Bible. Uh, God continues to show us grace even when we do not deserve. We deserve to be killed, but then He doesn't. We deserve to be punished, but He doesn't. He gives grace, in a sense, to everybody to live and to have an opportunity to know Jesus Christ. That's an act of love as well. And so, uh, when we look at that again, the character of Barnabas comes to mind. He's willing to trust Mark
mm,
despite Mark's failure as well. So, I mean, when you look at Jesus's example, when you look at the example of Barnabas, uh, I think that's where we see where they handle truth at the same time love. They are not willing to disregard the risk of the lies that have been told, and yet they choose to also honor the call for love.
mm,
So when Jesus confronts Peter,
mm,
it gives Peter also an opportunity to recognize the truth of who he is, and
mm,
that then uh, kind of refines his love for Jesus. It's like going through a refining process. Otherwise,
mm,
that would be something that would not have been dealt with, that would have remained undealt. So I think when it comes to our practical life as well, it's a difficult choice because sometimes it's easier to take the shortcut of ignoring the truth and say we love, but then a lot of times I think we would be lying to ourselves as well. And that would come out in future in other forms of conflict. But until and unless we recognize the truth, let's say there has been some harm, there has been some conflict, and we have to come face to face and agree that yes, there was some conflict, and yes, uh, there were such things said that should not have been said from either of one of us or both of us. That agreement then gives us the freedom to then proceed with love, to forget this and them. If we are not willing to come to face to face and agree that we had a disagreement, but we are just going to act as if nothing happened, that would be a kind of a show, which would not be a very strong bond, which would be vulnerable to another disagreement coming up in future and then breaking, and all of the past disagreements adding up to the frustrations.
mm,
So that's where I think
mm,
Truth and Reconciliation Committee, that was something that was formed in South Africa. They combined both of the fact, the truth of the segregation, the truth of the oppression, but also the need to reconcile, the need for
mm,
reconciliation as well. So both have to
mm,
be held
mm,
hand in hand.
mm,
So what
mm,
Warren Wiersbe is saying is, truth without love is brutality, and love without truth is hypocrisy.
mm, mm. Even Francis Schaeffer also mentioned about this. Truth without love is brings arrogance, right? And
Yeah,
love without truth brings compromise, which
yeah.
is not a true a good sign for Christian. Yes. Mm. And truth, excuse me, truth, as you said, without truth there can be no reconciliation, and that reconciliation cannot be based on lies. And truth and love is in fact not opposite to each other. And as we talk about the truth, in defining the truth in the Bible, could be okay. One of the reasons where divisions happen, how we define the truth. And one of the two Bible verses quoted and focused by the writer here in this book is John 17:21, where Jesus prayed about unity among his followers. But we see today, when we see the churches, believers, oh, if I say we are not united, I think I will not be wrong. So why do you think we are so much divided? What could be the main reason behind the disunity in churches today? And what role can we play as a Christian to pursue unity without compromising the essential truths?
I think here one has to recognize the reality. Again, this is the truth. We are called to love like Jesus. And yet, it is also not easy to love like Jesus.
Mm,
Uh, we need to surrender more of ourselves to be able to love like Jesus. And
mm,
yes, you're absolutely correct. When we look at the world around us and see the church, yes, we see disunity in the church, but then we see disunity across the world, in every sphere.
mm,
And church in various ways mirrors the world as well, because it is
mm,
made up of people who are in the world. We will be called not to be of this world, but we are in the world as well. So we, in that way, in various ways, we bring things of the world in the church. And in that way, uh, yes, there is disunity in the church, but then there is disunity in every aspect of the society, be it in the governments, be it in our families, be it in our neighborhoods. And all of that, somewhere or the other, uh, is rooted in the problem of me, that my view is the better view or the best view. And that is where we struggle to compromise. And here, compromise does not necessarily always mean compromise on convictions,
mm,
right? Uh, Here, for example, what Schaeffer says is like, when we approach conflict, when we approach disagreements, are we coming with a desire to solve it, or are we coming with a desire to win? I think that's
mm,
where the problem lies. That's what I think Schaeffer again brings out very strongly, that a lot of times when it comes to conflict resolution or disagreements, we get into those conversations with a desire to come out as the victor
mm,
rather than someone who is a peacemaker. Again, going
mm,
back to, uh, I mean, the Beatitudes, blessed are the
mm,
peacemakers, right?
mm.
But as humans, our tendency is to continue to be the victors.
Victor.
And that's
Mm,
again our challenge. Mm, I mean, this is again where Paul reminds the Corinthians. Like that's where he was talking about, I believe that to the church or to the early church, his challenge was not to take disputes to the court, because that is one way of showing or of not showing observable love.
mm,
Rather, like that's again Schaeffer's understanding that the love that is shared within Christians, within the fellowship, within the brotherhood of Christ, it should be observable, and especially in the context of conflict when we are not able to disagree, we are not able to agree. I beg your pardon. So, I mean, that is something that stands out for the world to see that yes, as people, we do not agree on everything, and yet we are able to come together and share not just a show of love, but a genuineness of love. So I think that's where, when we disagree, I mean, how we come to a resolution which will give God the glory. I mean, which will be true to the Bible and which will exhibit God's love along with His holiness. That's the challenge that Schaeffer again challenges us. But that is where we, as people, we as communities, we as churches, struggle. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that we struggle there. One of the again very interesting thing about the Bible is it presents the truth the way it is. It does not
mm,
try to put things very in a very rosy, goody way. For example, when you look at, as you talked about unity in the context of differences of opinions or convictions, I mentioned about Barnabas some time back. Uh, and Paul and Barnabas have a sharp argument, a sharp
mm,
disagreement, and they are not
mm,
able to uh, unite on their difference of opinions. So they
mm,
actually choose to separate, right? Uh, Paul goes with Silas and Barnabas takes Mark. But then the very interesting thing over here is much later when Paul is writing, he is looking forward to be united with Mark.
mm,
The same Paul who was not able to trust Mark at that point of time,
mm,
over a period of time has been transformed and has grown in his faith and maturity that he is now able to long for Mark. He's longing for Mark. I think
mm,
that's the journey of a Christian as well. Like we should
mm,
not become closed to the work of the Holy Spirit in the lives of people, in the lives of
mm,
groups that with whom we disagree, right?
mm,
And
mm,
the moment we are closed to the work of the Spirit in their lives, in one way we are closing off the work of the Spirit in our lives as well. But
mm,
that's despite the sharp argument that they have, I think that's where the maturity of Paul and the early church is seen, that they are willing to even uh, let go of their own egos and let go of the me,
mm,
and they are even willing to see God at work in the lives of others. And I
mm,
think that's something that stands out. So I think it's a challenge, but then with God at work in our lives, uh, we can see it happen. And I think that's again the challenge also brings out the presence and power of Jesus Christ in our life. It
mm,
brings out grace. It portrays grace in a much more stronger way.
mm, mm. Thank you. Thank you, brother. Yes, I said in the beginning, our discussion is not based on the book's content, but the questions that come out as we read the book, and also that comes in our mind as we discuss. So, thank you so much, brother Shashank. If there is anything you would like to say for the last concluding line.
I'll just say, if any of you want to know more about the book, then all I can suggest is read. Uh,
Mm.
it's a very short book. You could read it in an afternoon, uh, but it's worth reading and it's worth applying. Thank you.
Thank you.